There were a lot of things from that Thursday night in Cleveland that people can be really offended by. But the thing that's most egregious to me is that Iron Maiden is still not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Southside Beat here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. My name is Chris Halicke. Joining me today is Matt Williamson. Greg McAfee is on the road, about to cover the Pitt-Boston College game on Saturday. So Matt and I are going to carry the show today. And Matt, first off, how was Thanksgiving, man?
Great, man. How about you? Good family time, but squashed a lot in before, and now we're kind of relaxing, recording this while the Black Friday game's going on, which is kind of fun too.
Yeah, no, I was good. I had I didn't eat anything almost all day because I just woke up. I went straight to the South Side, and I had like a cinnamon roll on the way there, and then I didn't eat anything until I got home from covering everything, and then I had like 3 deviled eggs to tide me over till dinner, and then I was in a state of both completely satisfied and horribly uncomfortable by night's end.
So you feasted, huh?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
All right. So somebody who did not feast the Thursday before that was the Pittsburgh Steelers. They did not do that. They lost 24-19 to the Browns. I admit I went against my gut feeling on this. I really thought I thought what I'm seeing on paper, the Steelers are a better football team. And I still think the Steelers are a better football team than the Browns. But just the circumstance going into Cleveland on a Thursday night, I had it as an automatic loss at the beginning of the season. I mean, there were a lot of variables to take away from that game. And obviously, the weather being one of them. It snowed way worse than I think anybody expected it to. But still, Matt, what the heck happened in this game, dude?
Yeah, I think this upcoming game will either ease our minds or throw a gallon of gasoline on the fire. You know, I mean, I really think this will be telling in all regards. You know, I know we'll get to previewing, but you know, can you hold Burrow and those guys somewhat in check? Can you move the ball against a bad defense, historically bad red zone defense? Can you score when you're in tight? Or was that just a one-off in a place you don't have a lot of success in a tough situation, and the weather didn't help anyone's cause in the second half, of course. I'm with you, though. I looked at the season-long numbers, and I looked at the Browns and thought, man, and I still believe the 2024 Browns are a terrible football team. But the Jameis Winston-led team is an average football team that's going to beat some people, and I think that all communities, all NFL cities are faulty of this, but I think the Steelers Nation is particularly faulty, as much as I love them. They don't ever give the opponent any credit. You know, I mean, like, that was a tough environment, and the Browns maybe played their best game of the year, and you almost had them in the end.
Yeah, and we joke about this, like, in the press box amongst all the reporters, like, this was the Browns Super Bowl. Like,
yeah, right.
Like this was the game that they were going to try. I think even if they were to lose in Pittsburgh next week, like it's not that big of a deal to them. They wanted to beat Pittsburgh in their stadium.
Primetime game.
Yeah, prime time. It's just, because the next game's a 1:00 game. It's going to be kind of lost in the fold if the Steelers beat the Browns. Shocker. But no, this one was in prime time. It was everybody was going to be watching. They wanted to win that one. And the only part of that game that concerns me, because yes, you could actually break this down and be like, okay, the red zone offense was bad again. The defense let up too many key plays on key downs. Like, you can comb through all that and you can be, but again, that stuff is correctable. The stuff that bothered me the most was I thought this was Arthur Smith's worst game as a play caller. And then
I agree.
Some of the personnel decisions, this is a season-long trend for me, and this was kind of the anvil that broke the camel's back to me. When you have 13 personnel on the field, Ben Skoranek should never be the only receiver on the field. Yeah. When you are in 11 personnel, Michael Pruitt should never be the only tight end on the field. You know, that is
your third choice, right?
Yes.
Not even a second choice, right?
At most, yeah. I mean, it should be like, when you're talking 11 personnel, it has to be Pat Freiermuth or Darnell Washington. This offense does not use its best players enough. And that to me is the biggest concern that I have. And it really was personified in that game against the Browns.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I hate to say it because of his last name. I've probably seen enough of Connor Hayward in the offense as well. I think he's a pure special teamer that I'll throw some former recent Steelers under the bus, but I always used to talk about every time they would trot Gunnar Olszewski or even Allen Robinson out there, the defense says thank you, and I think Hayward's kind of that guy now. Your examples are pretty darn similar. And it is a Smith criticism over his career is he kind of outthinks himself at times, and I understood that, especially when you were the head guy in Atlanta, because there wasn't anyone to be like, whoa, Art, no. Get Pickens and Freiermuth out there. So now it's Tomlin's job to recognize that and say, you're the coordinator, you're not the head coach. We need to get the best people the ball as much as possible because they're great about it with Pickens. Like when you say they don't use their best players properly, they do their best player properly. And I'm with you. And I also think that they get the third down way too much. I mean, a lot of second and long runs, a lot of run, hope to get the third down. I mean, if you finish the season 500 or 50% success rate on third down, you had a monster season. I don't want to just get the third downs. You need to get the, first downs on first and second down.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And that is another big issue that they get into too many 3rd and 1s and 4th and 1s that they, Mike Tomlin's, he's an aggressive coach. He's going to want to go for those 4th and 1s. And, a big complaint was, why is 3rd and 1 such a struggle? And my goal, because a lot of people were like, it's the play calling. He's not thinking himself. I'm like, listen, they lined up and tried to run it between the tackles like the vast majority of teams will do. The Browns did it.
Yeah.
I mean, the Browns did it, and they did it with no problem. The Steelers couldn't do it. That is just execution. That's not play calling. That's not the coaching. Now, trust me, again, I will continue to say that the coaching was the biggest issue I had with this game. Like I said, I thought it was Arthur Smith's worst game. I thought Mike Tomlin's clock management was not great.
Right.
His usage of timeouts. The only thing that I'll kind of give them a pass on was whenever that illegal touching penalty was called, and they thought that they were calling intentional grounding, and they didn't call it, and so they were like, well, now we want to accept that penalty because we would rather have the distance be the factor that they have to overcome, not the downs. That can go 50-50 either way, but that's all they wanted to make. And
there's some Monday morning quarterbacking on that one.
Right, there is for sure. But what I'm saying is in the middle of that, they are completely confused about getting which personnel group they want to get out on the field.
Yeah, there's too much of that in general, I thought.
And then they have to burn a timeout. And the substitution issues this is not just a one-game thing. And that's why I'm like, there's a big part of me that thinks like, okay, Mike Tomlin is now 2-9 on Thursday nights. Maybe just Thursday night is his
kryptonite.
Yeah, his kryptonite, or maybe he's just like, you know what? I'm not going to try to, change everything that I do just to try to win this Thursday night game when 15 of the other games are on a Sunday or a Monday or a Saturday where I have a typical week to get ready for things. And so, but we'll move on just like the Steelers have. And we're actually going to take a quick break real quick.
It's going to preview into the next thing.
Yeah.
My most disappointing thing from that game was the defensive line, which I still believe is the best in the league. And man, talk about Tomlin's weaknesses. I just have a hunch that the last 10 days are Tomlin poking at Cam and TJ, and I think they'll play a little differently in this one is my point.
They probably should, and they need to.
Yeah.
We'll get in. Right. Yeah. We'll get into that. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll get into this upcoming matchup with the Bengals. It's going to be a big one. Bengals are 4-7, but again, records don't mean anything when you're talking AFC North football. So we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back to break it all down.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores, track the latest stats, chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Sunday, 1 p.m. at Paycor Stadium on the bank of the Ohio River. It will be Steelers, Bengals, and Cincinnati. So there are a number of different ways that I think this game can go, but I think when we're talking about the Bengals, we have to start with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. In my opinion, the most lethal quarterback receiver combo in the league. You could make an argument for a few other people, but
I think they're number one.
Yeah, to me, that's the most dangerous one. So is it a situation where you feel like you have to just completely sell out to take them out of the game, or is it kind of the way the Steelers have been playing like Lamar Jackson? It's not about trying to stop everything that he does, but just put a ceiling on it.
Yeah, and I don't know what approach they will take. And of course, you have to lump T. Higgins into this mix as well. I mean, he missed a little time, but I think he's playing the best football of his career going into a contract year. Chase is entering his prime. Chase and Burrow separately might be the best quarterback and wide receiver in the league this season. I mean, that's how well they're playing, let alone the synergy they have, and all their numbers go up drastically when Higgins is on the field. How I would handle it, but I know the Steelers kind of do what they do, is, again, I would put all the stress on my front four and my defensive line and say, we're not blitzing much. We're playing cover two. That's not even what we like to do. We are taking an umbrella over this thing, and we're going to make them have long drives. And if we lose a time of possession battle, I can live with it in this game. I can't live with those two. They're both really good after the catch this year, too. Getting loose or getting behind me. And I don't even know that I'd follow Porter. I might just left-right it and play a lot of cover two, cover four, middle of the field open stuff, and just take away big plays, run and catch the ball, lighter boxes against a run, and just know that they're going to get theirs. And I know that that's a passive way of playing football that they don't always take. But I'm going to say, if they win this game, the storyline on Monday to me is, oh, yeah, that's the best D-line in the league. I remember them, and they dominated the point of attack and they dominated the pass rush. And that's where I'd be talking for the last 10 days. If I was Tomlin, that's what I'd be saying over and over and over.
Well, and that's where, not to keep harping on the Cleveland game, but, that should have been a game where the defensive line feasted, and they didn't.
Exactly.
And This is another game where the defensive line should be feasting.
1 week ago when we did the show, or a little over, I said, I'm predicting a dozen sacks in Ohio these next 2 weeks. Well, I think they got like 11 to go, Yeah. It did not come to fruition, but they're capable,
Yeah, they are. And typically it's not a good offensive line in Cincinnati, and that's the case again. Alex Highsmith is officially doubtful for the game, but I mean, doubtful rarely ever turns into an actual clearance for the game. So let's just rule him out. So it's going to be more Nick Herbig, and we know what Herbig can do as a pass rusher. How well is he going to do in terms of run defense? Now Preston Smith it could also be in the mix too. But TJ
Orlando Brown report by chance?
He is officially questionable.
Okay, that's what I thought. Because I think that's a big deal. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think he's a little bit overrated, a little bit overpaid. But the difference between him and Cody Ford is night and day. If it's Cody Ford, I can't leave him alone on Herbig or Smith, which obviously is a direct influence on Watt versus Mims. But if it's Brown, hey, you got those guys by yourself on an island all day,
Yeah, exactly. And then, obviously talking about the guys in the middle, this team right now has 25 sacks, and that's, I think, tied for 22nd in the league heading into the week.
We can explain a ton of that away, and they're high in pressure rate, and they just want to keep Lamar and Daniels in the pocket. Okay, but that number's still too low.
It is too low.
It's too low.
It is too low, especially whenever you have, TJ Watt, who for, every single season of the past, however many seasons that he's been fully healthy, he's led the league in sacks, and right now he's not even in the top 5. And I understand that TJ is doing things other than sacking the quarterback, and that's why I'm not saying like, oh, it's been a bad year for TJ, not at all. But Cam Hayward is playing maybe the best football of his career.
I think he is, yeah.
That's what's scary about it, is that he's still playing at a very high level. Keanu Benton came out of college as a more polished pass rusher than a run defender. And you have the guys to get to the quarterback, and it's not happening. And that's why I'm concerned about this. That's one reason to be concerned about this game, because Joe Burrow is exceptional at evading pressure, creating. And, they talk about quarterback mobility this week, but it's not the mobility that Lamar Jackson or Jaden Daniels possesses. It's the ability to literally move around and make throws outside the pocket.
And he looks better at that than ever. Yeah. And as a runner. I mean, he's not going to be Lamar Daniels, of course, but I think he looks more athletic, lighter on his feet, more mobile than I can ever remember him.
Yeah, for sure. No, the Burrow is playing I don't know if I'd say his best football ever, but it's up there.
Remarkable.
He's one of the best. He's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league, and it's going to be a tall task for this defense. Now, the other side of the ball for Cincinnati is not so great. They are pretty terrible on the defensive side. And again, I feel like we talk about this pretty frequently, but this seems like a game that the offense should do very well. And we talked about that last week. It didn't happen. Now, granted, factors play, the weather, you can't do the go balls don't work so well whenever you can't see through, 5 feet past your face because of how the snow's falling. This needs to be a game the offense puts up points.
I mentioned the red zone stuff. I just wanted to back it up with a little bit of numbers. We know that the Steelers have been bad. They're 3rd worst. Mm-hmm. But only Dallas's defense is worse in the red zone than the Bengals, who allow a 70.5 conversion rate. Yeah. But over the last 3 games, it's 86% conversion rate. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's been horrific. And they're not very stout up the middle since DJ Reader left. A lot of go back real quick. I mean, how the Bengals were built. The Bengals, luck, whatever, into Burrow, Chase, etc. And in the meantime, built a defense with Reader and Hilton and Hendrickson from outside the organization. They uncharacteristically spent money and built a defense. Now, those guys are starting to get a little bit older. Hendrickson's still awesome. But wisely, they realized we're going to have to pay the offense here, so we better draft defense like crazy. For the last 3 years, they just haven't hit on anybody. Miles Murphy and Turner and Hill are out of this game. So that all their investments just haven't paid off. So it's not a very talented group. Some guys are a little past their prime. Some are a little overpaid. The rookies have not stepped up, except for Hendrickson, who's still amazing and still gets his no matter what. And of course, we're going to talk about, we're going to double Hendrickson every time. Well, every team goes into the Bengals game doing that, and he still has 11.5 sacks. However, they are in clusters. I think he had 4 against the Raiders.
Yeah.
What are you doing? How are you letting that happen at halftime? I think a bunch of them are the Browns against backup tackles, but the good teams he has not feasted on.
Yeah, and that is kind of the theme with the Bengals as a whole. After the Giants lost yesterday, the wins that the Bengals have are against opponents with a combined record of 10-35.
Yeah,
and they're 0-6 against teams with a winning record. Yeah. It really
1-6 in 1-score games, finding ways to lose.
And that is typically defense. Their defense cannot, because they can put up points.
They can't put anybody away.
Yeah,
with a pass rush, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they don't grind. I mean, as good as their offense is, they don't grind people down with a 10-point lead with the run game either. Right. And then they miss a lot of field goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's again, this is a game that is winnable. Also worth noting that Joe Burrow has thrown more interceptions against the Steelers than any other opponent. Now, I think 2 of those are just TJ Watt being TJ Watt. Just jumping up at the line of scrimmage and literally, instead of batting it down like 99.9% of other defensive linemen do, he will just reach up and grab it and, and come down with it. And he's done that twice. I think he did it twice in the same season to Burrow.
Like, you could convince me that the Steelers have Lamar's number. I'm not quite there on Burrow. I mean,
no,
yeah.
I'm not saying that,
Yeah,
but
I know. Yeah.
But I am saying, like, when you look at the numbers, I think he has a passer rating of like 88, which, you know, you're like, okay, that's a pretty decent passer rating, but that's also the fifth worst against any of his opponents that he's faced.
Mm-hmm. That's how good he is,
right? And yeah, that just goes to show how good he is, and
he also hasn't played him since 2022 either. You know,
yeah, and so
a little bit different beast.
There is going to be a difference. You know, when we talk about, the Steelers swept the Bengals last year. Well, they also, like I said, played the Bengals without Burrow both times.
Right.
I do think this is still a winnable game for the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mainly because this offense has to put up points and should put up points on the Cincinnati defense. They just have to. And when you talk about grinding teams down, that's typically the way the Steelers will go about it. But obviously the thing that just continues to concern me is just the quick strike and big playability of that offense with Burrow and Chase and Higgins and one guy we already mentioned is Mike Gesicki. He can be an X factor in there too, because like you said, if the Steelers do play a lot more middle field open, well, that leaves the tight end kind of open down the seam, and that's one thing you don't want to get
capable.
Right. You don't want to get picked apart that way. So, all right. Well,
real quick, when the Steelers have the ball, one thing I want to defend Smith on that I just crushed him for is the second down runs and all that. I do think, and you kind of alluded to it just now, that the first half pays off in the fourth quarter with all those runs too. I mean, they do land a lot of body blows that might not bear fruit right away, and you might be 3rd and 1 instead. You know, I'm not saying it's great, but I do think there's a deeper method to the madness too, that in the fourth quarter they start beating up on teams because tackling Najee all day got old. You know, I mean, I do think there's something to be said for that. And this defense is so, I don't know about you, but I think you can attack it equally through the air and on the ground. Like, I don't think there's anything you really have to avoid, or we're just going to run like crazy and play old school Steeler football. I'm still not in the mood for 3.9 yards carry either, you know?
Yeah, I get that. And, you know, honestly, I look at the way that this offense, now granted, it's not the same offense. It's not Matt Canada's offense. It's not, you know, Eddie Faulkner and Mike Sullivan being the interim coordinators and play callers or anything. But the way that they played this defense last year, I just think you kind of replicate it. You know, just kind of come in with a similar game plan. You know, because both games, it didn't matter. You know, Kenny Pickett was the quarterback in the first game, and then Mason Rudolph was the quarterback in the second game, and they put up a whole bunch of yards. They didn't score a lot in the one in Cincinnati where Kenny was the quarterback, but they put up a lot of yards. And then they put up a lot of points whenever Mason was in there. And so it can be a similar game plan in which they find chunks. You can attack the middle of that defense. I think there are ways to do it. And so
I agree.
Yeah, it's
like the Browns defense is way better than this group.
Yes.
Even if the numbers weren't glowing coming into that game. I mean, there's better coach.
Even just,
better
yeah.
coaches, you know,
yeah, because like Garrett's a better edge rusher than Hendrickson. Nothing against Hendrickson, but Garrett's a better. Yeah, Garrett's better, and then their corners are amazing. You know, it doesn't matter what the rest of the defense is. Cleveland's got great corners. The Bengals not so much. You know, it's just the one thing that's kind of sticking out, because part of me is still concerned, and I'll save it for my predictions. So let's just get into predictions now.
Yeah, okay. Take it away. You're up.
Okay, so my thing that I was going to bring up was, I think that we're starting to see the overall trend of a Mike Tomlin coach team come to fruition a little bit more, just with how he wins and loses. He loses a lot on the Thursday night games. He's 2-9. He's completely dominant on Monday night games when he has even an extra day to prepare.
Yeah,
they're also 14-4 after a bye week.
Yeah. Give them extra time and forget about it. Right.
Right. And so following a Thursday night game, that's a mini bye. And so I looked it up. I did the homework. They are 13-6 following a mini bye.
Really?
And
Pretty strong trends on good and bad, right?
Right. And so, and Cincinnati under Zach Taylor they're 3-2 after a bye. So they're okay. They've played the Steelers twice after byes. They've won one and lost one. So I'm looking at this. I'm like, part of me is very concerned about Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase putting up 50 points.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to go with the trends here. The trend that I should have gone with last week and picked Cleveland to win. I'm going to go with that extra time to prepare. Tomlin being 13-6 after a mini bye. I'm going to say the Steelers are going to win this one. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I really do. I think we even saw one of those that season opener in 22 when Minka had the blocked extra point at the end and went into overtime and both kickers missed a field. That was a crazy game. I'm going to say not that's going to be that crazy, but I'm going to say final score something like let's say 34-30.
Wow, okay.
Steelers
win.
Yeah.
I have 24-23 Steelers. I just think if they do put an umbrella over things, they can shorten the game to some degree, and run the ball a fair amount. And maybe there's not as many explosives in this as we, fear in some degree. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, is you're playing a desperate team here, too. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that the Bengals aren't going to win the North, but they could still get hot and get into the playoffs. But they have 5 conference losses. And if they get number 6, even more so than the divisional loss, sayonara. I mean, that's a wrap. I mean, all the tiebreakers would really bury them. And then there's a side note to that is, what version of the Bengals do you get in week 18 if they're already eliminated and don't care? You could kind of beat them twice. You could eliminate them and maybe get a lesser version in week 18 because of it. I just really don't like where the Bengals defense is at. I think the Steelers kicking game in what we think is probably going to be a close game certainly favors Boz, special teams in general, but I don't feel super confident. And I certainly could see this game being played in the 30s.
Oh yeah. And that's this.
And I don't know if that's good for the Steelers.
No, I don't think so. But I think that when it comes down to it, if both offenses are making plays against both of these defenses, that the Steelers defense at least has the ability to make a play here and there. And I don't see
last year's version. It's not the back end of the years. Right.
Right. And so I think that, the offense of all the things that we can complain about, they can hit the big play with Russell Wilson, a quarterback. They have shown that it's not just the go ball to George Pickens. They've had some big screens to Najee a couple of times. He's hit now Calvin Austin for a couple of big passes, obviously the one last week, the touchdown. But I'm just saying, if this does get into a similar game to what we saw the Bengals play against the Ravens the last time they played, when it was a Thursday night game, I can see the Steelers defense making a play when needed more often than the Bengals defense making a play when needed. And that might give the Steelers the advantage down the stretch, is that this offense, that both offenses can put up points. People don't want to put that on the Steelers because, they just think that it's not good enough. They're the 14th scoring offense, and actually they've left points out there in a couple of different games. For example, they left 7 points out there against the Chargers when they can
or whatever, right?
They can put up points. And so that's what I'm saying. That's why I think this is a game in which the defense could win it for you. By making
that's my biggest
plays.
thing, and I think I started the podcast by saying it. I'm just going to trust the D line.
Yeah, and that's what it should be.
Yeah, that's
sure.
The biggest strength of your team. I trust the D line after an underwhelming performance. They're too talented. They're too proud to do it 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, especially with December starting. This is the month where they unleash hell.
And Volson, the left guard against Cam, is also a major problem for the Bengals.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have to do better.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I hope you guys enjoy the game. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you feel more prepared for this game now. But either way, it should be a good time. The one thing I'm not looking forward to is just being in Cincinnati. The press box food always has Skyline chili, and I'd rather, eat almost anything else. So, all right, guys, we'll talk to you later. I'll be back next week to break this game down and then preview the rematch with the Browns. But until then, we'll catch you guys on the Flippity Flip.